Have you checked the children? Your little master.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Sometimes that is better.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Long days and pleasant nights, fellow travelers along the path of the beam. I am known on this level of the tower as Jaime Fuego, and if please you join me here for a bit of palaver on Hail to Stephen King. That's Riza, y'all, and obviously bienvenidos and welcome to the horror show for our weekly worship. El Rey, Sai King, my beloved favorite author, as you probably can tell by the tome of tales behind me there. But yes, we are approaching the end of our Saturdays, the big channel relaunch here on the horror show that is happening at the beginning of May. And this program will be shifting back to Tower Tuesdays, just FYI, but that is inconsequential today. There is a lot of Red Status stuff to discuss. Most notably, a recent collected comic that just came out on 4/20, that's right, 4/20, April 20th, this past Tuesday, and none other than the first collection of Sleeping Beauties. Now, just a little background about Sleeping Beauties. It actually, the novel that this IDW comic is based on came out, September 26, 2017, and while I've been relatively critical of that novel, and I still feel that way even with this streamlined visual version, but I always did at least contend that it was an interesting setup about this small Appalachian town called Dueling and how they find themselves caught in this, it's originally called like the Australian sleeping flu or something, and then of course there's, the Asian something flu, whatever. It was very poignant reading this we're still not in the aftermath, but I guess still being in the midst of this crazy past year or so that we have experienced across this planet. So it was much more of a surreal tale at this particular point of all of the women in the world basically falling asleep and having this like weird webbing of sorts, but it's more like a cocoon because moths and butterflies and stuff like that are like kind of a thing in this tale. But yes, so women are basically all succumbing to this aurora, just like the princess from Sleeping Beauty, and they fall asleep. And if they are awakened, they become these like violent maniacs and just have at it and just like. I guess you could describe it as kind of like Sai King's other tale, Cell, or even further back, like almost like a rage zombie kind of situation, like the Crazies, if anybody's familiar with the Romero movie, and the very solid remake, in my estimation, with Timothy Olyphant. But so yeah, basically this crazy thing is happening across the globe, and yeah, the men are rioting, women are, asking for answers and going crazy as well, even before they go to sleep, and then are potentially reawakened. But it's all told through the focus of this town Dueling in Appalachia. And yeah, I mean, there's a bevy of characters in the actual novel. As you would probably assume, it's relatively streamlined for this particular tale by IDW. And yes, it was initially announced. Boy, I've got the notes here, so let's consult them. I have them for a reason. Yes, the comic debuted in June of 2020 with its first issue, and it was announced that it was going to be a 10-issue run. So this baby basically collects the first 5 issues, and it's a nice hardcover. It's got all of the alternate artwork and stuff like that in it, because each issue had a variant cover, as is typical with the comic beesies. And so yeah, there is an issue in June, July, August, and they took a few months off, and then December of 2020, January of 2021, and then they've been on a break since then. But apparently they are going to be relaunching with the 6th issue in May. There's another one in July, and then another one in September, so they're going to go 1 month on, 1 month off, and I'm not sure if they've altered plans and are only going to do 8 issues now as opposed to 10, because on the IDW website they only have it listed through the 8th issue, at least for now. But obviously these things, these things take time. You can write a comic book script, but just actually, making the visuals for it and, like the, I don't know, inking and, coloring and, even the lettering that I think is kind of a understated thing in these books at times. But, another thing about this tale that, like, even before it was released, I think it was way back in, like, April of 2017, if I remember correctly. Yeah, the book hadn't even come out yet, and yet the rights were already optioned by somebody because it was 2017 and the King Assance was starting to become upon us. And I mean, it hadn't come out yet, but I guess people could kind of smell it in the air as far back as April, and just about anything Sai King, like even before it's properly released, when it's initially announced, shortly thereafter, just like with the Institute, just like with pretty much every story from If It Bleeds, you have those rights already snatched up by somebody. And so that was no exception. And then in 2019, if I remember correctly, April of 2019, so 2 years later, there was a pilot that was ordered by AMC Networks, and I guess Owen, King's son, who Stevie actually co-wrote the original novel with, that large monstrosity of a book. He was actually going to be scripting that pilot, but we haven't heard a peep since then, and it's been 2 years. Now, granted, it's been 2 years dealing with, number 19, but yeah, nonetheless, they announce so many King projects at this particular point, and then we rarely see them come to fruition. So yes, I'm not holding my breath that we'll get a Sleeping Beauties television series, but I would be intrigued to see how they would go about it as a serialized series, because I think in some ways the visual medium, and I know I've talked about that for the Sleeping Beauties book before and its potential adaptations, that when you're dealing with so many characters like you have in this particular tale, and just to double down, the comic does pare it down significantly, but I don't know, sometimes, like, look at AMC's The Walking Dead, for instance. They dealt with a large number of characters in the juggling act that is that. I think when you have the breathing room of, weekly episodic stuff, I think it does lend itself better, perhaps, but there is still a decent amount of characters in this, because dueling this town that we're seeing this whole, like, situation through, boy, we've got, so basically, I would say our two mainstays are, excuse me, everybody, little remnants from the breakfast, but you have the sheriff and her husband, and so the sheriff, this woman whose name eludes me at this particular point, and then her husband, who actually works at this women's penitentiary, which is in dueling, and is basically one of the main sources, presumably, for their income and lots of jobs created and stuff like that. So her husband is like the main psychologist at the penitentiary, and then she is the sheriff, and then we've got sub-characters like the actual warden herself, and then we have a newscaster who, when all of this stuff starts going, she's actually the daughter of the warden, and so she leaves wherever she is, like Washington or whatever big city, and so she decides to go home as hysteria is sweeping not just the nation but the entire world, and the aforementioned rioting and protesting and all of this other crazy stuff. So it was really, once again, it was a surreal situation seeing this visualized. So just to give everybody their proper due in this, so obviously Sai King and his son Owen were the ones who the material is based on, but it was adapted by Rio Ewers, I believe, and then you've got the art by Allison Sampson, colors by Triona Tree Farrell, and you have letters by Krista Meissner and Valerie Lopez. And so this Rio guy, I'm not familiar with him, but he is the only man on the project, and so since this is a very female-centric story, which Stevie K has shown time and time again, whether it's Dolores Claiborne, Rose Madder, whatever it may be, he has shown time and time again, Carrie obviously being another one of the most iconic, that when you're writing from a woman's perspective and like in a sympathetic sort of situation, Lisi's story, which is coming to Apple TV Plus here in June, he's always shown an adaptability to do it respectfully and insightfully, and I know Tabby has something to do with that, obviously. But yeah, so primarily a lady-centric creative team here, which is cool. The artwork it's interesting. So let's take a peek right there, guys. So it's got almost like a watercolor kind of style. This was originally, as I try to find something that emphasizes it a little bit better, this was originally going to be just a proper horror show comic review, and we've reviewed, Joe Hill comics like Lock and Key and, Basket Full of Heads and stuff like that, and Stephen King comics and whatnot, but those haven't always been hail to Stephen King episodes. They were just like horror show episodes proper with Cecil and myself getting together, but I guess the artwork was just a little much for Cecil. He talked some smack on social media, and he bought the initial issue of this in June of 2020, and he was like, nope, dude, can't do it, cannot do it. I do think the artwork, because animals play a significant role in this, because so at the onset of this aurora, as it's later dubbed, transpiring, there is a mysterious naked woman who just shows up in town. She also has the ability to talk to animals, so she's got kind of the not Sleeping Beauty, the Snow White sort of situation going on, with the animals gravitating towards her. And so there is a larger abundance of animals there now. There is a strange new mother tree that sprouted up that culminated and just basically coincided with this Eve Black, as she calls herself's, arrival. So she also has mysterious abilities of insight, like when she's talking to the sheriff's husband, the psychologist at the women's penitentiary. She knows everything about him, from his upbringing and like the foster homes and in the different like youth homes and stuff like that. She knows everything about his upbringing. She knows insights about because she ends up getting apprehended and taken into custody after killing a couple guys at like a meth lab, and it gets burned up and all this stuff. And it's really like this story really starts with a bang, and I will still contend that I quite dig the setup and the concept. It's just where it goes, especially in the mid-half, and that's more so me just recalling the book and whatnot. This does obviously streamline the process a little bit, but yeah, so she shows up, kills those couple guys, taken into custody, and yet she knows things about these other women inmates. She knows things about the psychologist, as I mentioned, who works at the penitentiary. And so, yeah, she's very mysterious, and she also has the uncanny ability, unlike any other woman presumably in the world, to fall asleep and not have those webbing cocoon kind of stuff form all over her body. She can wake up and she's seemingly fine. So she is something otherworldly, obviously. And it's just, once the reveal of what happens with these women when they do, fall into the cocoons and fall asleep and stuff, they are basically transported into like an alternate dimension sort of situation. And that's about where we leave off here at the end of this 5th issue, presumably halfway through the series. And word gets out about the fact that Eve Black has this ability and that she's locked up, and as like the social unrest is starting to boil over even more so in dueling, I mean, they've got pharmacies being looted and stuff like that, but pretty soon it's presumably going to be just men, and you can only imagine men left to their devices without, just the calming, nurturing female presence to like balance men out. I mean, we're crazies, we're psychos, so there is a reason there is like that yin and yang, so to speak. And yeah, word gets out, and a local resident whose daughter is caught up in the webbing, and he's already kind of a volatile character. He forms the idea that he wants to go and, raid the prison and take this Eve Black and see if she has any means of waking up presumed daughter and various others. Eve hints that she possibly could. So there's a lot of stuff up in the air in this cliffhanger half that we have. Yeah, just back to the artwork, as beautiful as it is, once again, with a little bit more of the animal action going on there. I don't know. I wasn't as about it. I'm not as critical as Cecil, but then again, Cecil reads a shit ton more comics than me. And also I feel like I feel like especially early on with Eve Black's initial introduction, I don't know. The one thing that I will say is that in the initial issues, and actually this is just in the very first issue, look how small the word bubbles are. It was actually, in some ways, because my eyesight isn't like fantastic, it was a little harder to read. They deliberately, in the second issue onward, go far larger with like the word bubbles and stuff like that. So, I mean, and here's a little bit of the unrest and, you know, getting out the riot gear and all that stuff. So, I mean, this artwork, I could see some peeps just being all about it. You know, as I constantly contend here, art is subjective, and so if y'all were big fans, if anybody has actually read this, yeah, I mean, to each their own. I just wasn't, I don't know, it's just not in my personal taste, but once again, there's lots of cool alternate covers, as you all too often have in the supplemental stuff in these comic collections, which is pretty dope. So, I don't know, all in all, as a completist, there is most definitely no way that I was not gonna add this to the collection along with the second volume, which we probably won't see for, I would imagine, about a year at this particular point. But, yeah, nonetheless, and then this one is kind of inspired by the cover of the original novel and stuff. So, yeah, I mean, once again, this is a book, not just a comic book, but even the source material with a lot of fascinating ideas behind it. It's just, I don't know. Just like with my criticism of Under the Dome, I think there's just, it's definitely How to Train Your Dragon. It drags, man. You know, it really does. But I don't know. I did find myself with like less of a significant cast of characters that in some ways I felt weren't developed to the degree of a lot of Side King stuff. Now, I don't know if that's not, you know, Owen's fault or whatever, but I don't know. Nonetheless, I did find myself just focusing more so on the positive aspects of the storytelling, even if, you know, the meth head who becomes friends with the reporter after she leaves her position, and the volatility of the guy who, if I recall the story correctly, despite the fact that it's been almost 4 years since I read it, the villain that he becomes and the power struggle that eventually transpires amongst these different men, the virtuousness of one in particular, and the inevitable villainy of another one, and those that he dissuades and whatnot. So, I mean, it's definitely interesting gender politics in this story, and as far as doomsday scenarios go, it's got such a unique setup where, I don't know, even if I'm not the biggest fan of this artwork, the storytelling is still relatively strong with, you know, trimming some of the minor characters that I didn't find that fascinating, and yet still, the ones that they do keep around in this are still not as developed and intriguing as the stronger ones in the novel, at least. There's just not as large of a cast of them, I guess. So, and once again, I think that this could lend itself with, you know, if it does end up on AMC, I would obviously watch it, I would obviously review it, and I would be intrigued to, you know, just see what would transpire. But have you checked out any of the issues of Sleeping Beauties? Once again, it's by IDW Comics, and they do all kinds of great genre stuff, and yeah, I mean, I've been impressed with most that I have read. I mean, IDW is right there with, you know, Image and Boom as far as interesting comics beyond the big two, and the big two obviously being Marvel and DC. So that is my thoughts here. Hail Ka-Tet on the first volume, which collects issues 1 through 5 of Sleeping Beauties, and let's just give their description here on the back in comparison with what I said. The official graphic novel adaptation of Stephen King and Owen King's Sleeping Beauties by Rio Ewers and Allison Sampson is a haunting interpretation of the chilling, timely New York Times bestseller. A bizarre sleeping sickness called Aurora has fallen over the world. Its victims can't wake up, and all of them are women. As nations fall into chaos, those women still awake take desperate measures to stay that way, and men everywhere begin to give in to their darkest impulses. Beauties. Meanwhile, in the small town of Dueling, a mysterious woman has walked out of the woods. She calls herself Eve and leaves a trail of carnage in her wake. Strangest of all, she's the only woman who can wake up. So, yeah, essentially the gist of what I said, but I'm always curious about how the marketers want to, describe it. So that is going to be the end of the proper proceedings today, but I have to give a big, ginormous status shout out to Barker Street Cinema, I believe it is. Basically, go on YouTube and search for Barker Street, because they are doing something all this weekend. So they did the first installment of it yesterday, being April 23rd. It goes today, Saturday, when this episode is going to go live, the 24th, and then concludes tomorrow, April 25th. They're doing something called Stephen King Rules. And yes, we all know that's taken from the shirt that little homie is wearing in the Monster Squad, that, the red and the yellow, that iconic tee that has become a thing all in of its own. But yeah, so they put together a weekend-long festival, which essentially it's a Dollar Baby film festival. And so if you're unfamiliar with Stephen King's Dollar Baby program, it's where he gives aspiring filmmakers, whether, small-time peeps or student, people or whatever, he has a bunch of different short stories that he gives people the opportunity to option for a single doll hair. $1, Bob, $1. And yeah, it's a fascinating program. He's been doing it for decades, and being the fact that it's like a student film, a amateur film, so to speak, and yet some of these get very impressive, as the slew that they showed yesterday indicated. That it's just like a fan film. So you can't make it for profit, you can't try to find distribution for it, although sometimes there are negotiations with King's Camp, as they talked about throughout the first day of the festival yesterday. But yeah, you can showcase it at festivals, and you're going to have immediate clout because obviously it's King. And yeah, for burgeoning filmmakers, it's a real coup to have that opportunity, and the fact that King is so gracious with his IPs, it's really cool. They showcased 10 different selections yesterday, including, oh boy, there were so many. There is a full feature, guys, based on Everything's Eventual. Yeah, Dinky from eventually, Dark Tower 7 and stuff, the Breaker, but his origin story, which is also collected in the short story collection, Everything's Eventual. But I saw some doozies, man, including A Very Tight Place, the story from Just After Sunset about dude getting trapped in the porta potty, and it had like a very like Tarantino, like spaghetti western mashed with Twilight Zone sort of bit. Like, that one was awesome. I hope that they are going to leave these up, because it was almost 9 hours of content. So they were giving a short introduction, showing the Dollar Baby short film, or in Everything's Eventual case, feature length, and then having a Q&A with the filmmakers afterwards. It was and live tweeting, and obviously being live streamed on YouTube. Like, there was the full chat going on. It was such amazing palaver. If you guys get the opportunity to check out this festival live, today here Saturday, I believe it goes live at 1 p.m. Pacific, and it goes all into the night until like 9, 10 p.m. And then tomorrow, being Sunday, I believe it starts at 11:30 and goes till almost 5 p.m. Pacific. So lots of exciting stuff to look forward to. I know they have I Am the Doorway that's going to be showcased. Barker Street, those guys actually have a feature-length adaptation of the Doctor's Case. I want to say basically the Sherlock Holmes story that King wrote that was collected, I believe, in Nightmares and Dreamscapes, if I'm not mistaken. But there's another version of The Man Who Loved Flowers. There's going to be an alternate version of All That You Love Will Be Carried Away. I mean, there's 11 films they're showing today, being Saturday. I'm just so stoked. I had such an amazing time, and I cannot extend a grande gracias enough to you viewers, and also to them specifically. We had some Twitter interactions. They're reading questions to the filmmakers. I got some new followers. I got to talk about this program in particular and spread the word about it. So it was just such a exciting and just enriching, rewarding sort of experience. So check it out. Once again, Barker Street. If you just search for their YouTube page, I believe it's Barker Street Cinema, if I'm not mistaken, or Barker Street Studios. One of those. I think Barker Street, bottom line, should be able to take you there. Or you can just search for the Stephen King Rules Dollar Baby Film Festival, and you will get all the information. And best of all, it's free. You don't even have to spend a buckaroo to watch this, so definitely go check it out. And if you get the chance this weekend, and fingers firmly crossed, they negotiated with King's Camp so that they're not going to take down these live shows afterwards, because last I checked when I woke up, it was still there today, so you know, I don't know if there's going to be like a window on it or whatever, but I cannot recommend it enough. I had a blast, and I'm very much looking forward to more of it this upcoming weekend. So I've been Jaime and Fuego. You can find more on all social media sectors like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, here on YouTube, where, boy, tomorrow being Sunday, right after the festival gets done is the Oscars, and I'm going to be doing a bunch of live tweeting and coverage of that. I've got an Oscar preview show that is going to be going up sometime today, later today. So that's in Fuegotainment. If you search that on YouTube, that's where you can get all of my content. Recent reviews were the Bob Odenkirk Nobody. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely cool stuff on there. The Courier, that's another one that I did recently. The one with none other than Doctor Strange himself. That's right. Also known as Sherlock Holmes. Also known as boy, why is the name of the damn actor eluding me? In any event, inconsequential. But any support over there is greatly appreciated. Benedict Cumberbatch. I knew it was going to come to me. But yes, obviously, a like, a share, a subscribe here on the horror show is significantly appreciated. The big relaunch party is May 2nd, so you have that to look forward to, and then you'll get a new Hail to Stephen King 2 days later on Tower Tuesday. So yes, lots of fun stuff in the pipeline, but most importantly, we are humbled and honored to have your presence here. So that's gonna do it. I've been Fuego, y'all have been Rad Status, and until the Wheel of Ka comes around once more, hasta luego, son amigos, constant readers and viewers alike, say thank you. Hopefully we share more of this palaver sooner rather than later, and until then, stay scared and read Stephen King, because Stephen King fucking rules.